Good afternoon, everyone. There's a new stock on my radar, and this stock is Photronics, ticker symbol PLAB. In this video, I'll walk you through my bullish thesis for why I like Photronics. I did start initial position today, and I'm looking for a move here similar in Photronics to the one we saw in Archer, with that market pulse turning green on the back of a series of edge signals. If you take a look, the fundamental technical setup is similar with the edge signals that we see here. The edge signals right here, along with that market pulse turning green. Now, first, let's talk a little bit about the company Photronics. What is the company? Photronics makes something called photomasks. And if you're unfamiliar with photomasks, you can think of a photomask almost like a stencil, but a stencil for a chip. So traditionally, when you have a stencil, you would spray paint over it and that design gets printed on whatever you have underneath. In the case of chips, you have these stencils, which get light that shines through it, and on the back of that light, you get the actual design that gets etched into the chips. Now, there's two different kinds of photomasks that Photronics makes. One, which is for integrated circuits, and these are your computer chips, and two, which is more for smartphones and TVs, which we call FDP or flat panel chips or their stencils. Now, what's interesting is this IC or integrated circuit chip accounts for about 70% of their current revenue, and the other side accounts for about 30%. In this May drop, we saw the 70% bucket drop quite a bit in terms of the revenue projections guidance. But what's interesting is the FDP side actually grew. Now, in spite of this growth, this drop is what led to a 36% decrease in the stock, more than $1 billion lost in market cap. Now, the question is, was this drop that we can justify for this actual cost, or was it overdone, which means there's still some opportunity? And obviously, I believe that case. Now, one thing I want to call out right off the bat, because this was the one big red herring that I would point out, is there's a lawsuit that the shareholders filed against Photronics, in that they weren't really being honest around some of the metrics that they released. So you may want to read a little bit more into that actual lawsuit. I'm looking for this to be a quick in and out, maybe on the back of earnings. Now, first off, Photronics, the unique edge it has, so now that we talked about what the company does, if you think about it, stencils means that Photronics really doesn't care as much about how many chips get printed. Rather, they care about how many different type of chip designs there are. So their business is really in the business of innovation. And if you think about the current constraints, you would expect there to be more and more chip designs that are coming out, all with the end of goal of being a little bit more efficient. And I think each new chip design, if you do enter this era of chip designs being the thing that gets optimized, would mean that a company like Photronics benefits. Now, I think there's three key things that stand out with Photronics here. The first thing that stands out, and this is on this drop, the same call in which they said that 70% demand had dropped, they continued to maintain their CapEx spend. And their CapEx spend is more than $330 million. To me, if I was in charge of this company and I saw reduced demand, I would be easing off on this CapEx spend. However, the fact that they didn't ease off at all tells me that they viewed this to be a temporary drop, and they're still very much bullish spending this money to build the factories. Now, what's interesting is, and this sort of leaches into point number two, is they have three factories in total, They have one in Allen, Texas, they have one in Boise, Idaho, and then they have one in Korea. Now, what's interesting is as they finish some of the work that's going on right now, the Allen, Texas new plant should allow Idaho to take some work off of its plate, which means that Idaho should then be able to do a little bit more expensive work. All this while, the factory in Korea is getting better equipment to make more advanced chips, so stencils for these more advanced chips, better metal plates, and I think a combination of bigger screens, better chip designs, and the ability to create these metal plates would mean that you can charge more. Also, combine that with the fact that Allen, Texas and Boise, Idaho are both in the United States. For any sort of defense application, I think you would trust the US manufacturing, especially for chip designs. And per my research, Photronics seems to be the only company in the United States with that sort of manufacturing power. So I do think that you have that going for it as well. And finally, if you take a look at the valuation at the current price, they are sitting on I think, very large cash balance. And I think that cash balance accounts for almost, close to $6 per share of this $32, which I think when you start to look at the stock closer to that 26 realm, when you factor in their cash balance, I think this is a very interesting place to get long as we head into its earnings season. So Photronics is a company that I started a position in, a company that I think could have a really nice move up here. I'm not sure if you will be able to fill this gap. I currently have the close order right near that 44.80-ish level, and that's near this wick and this current candle's high. That's a technical level. In the grand scheme, I'm just looking for this market pulse to turn up, ride this trend for as high as possible, and see what price action looks like once we get a confirmed earnings date. Hope you found this video helpful. See you in the next update. Take care, everyone. And for those of you in the Archer trade, congratulations on a nice win so far. Let's continue to see what happens after this gap up.